Okay. To begin with, I would like to ask, if they understood what is a substance and what is a property.
Can you repeat? Sorry.
I would like to ask them whether they understand what is meant by a substance and what is a property and substance. Do they understand the difference?
Okay. 아니 당보 고즈도 gelagi 아니 투어 하리당기라나 아니 뱀숙 당 아니 캐주얼라디 고즈메가라 아니 투어 당기스. 시자 do they have to answer them? Do they have to answer to you?
Yeah.
아니 like 기 뱀숙라나 카레라지라. 온디다 아니 캐주얼라나 카레라디 렌치 껴로나스. 카바도 카바 페치 당로나라. 아니 까마 오케이
뱀수라나 지나 나나 지나 바저로 샤서 오네다가 똑바빼 사서이나 겔라디 뜻 컨디션 쉐라마사 지다 안에 가르침 뱀수라나 어디 크랑 두째게 제데라고 인사레 두텐다 인데 소주데 차르라나 안에 디 페나 디 샤서 난다데 차르라나 갈라오데 시 뜻와 차르라나 쿠르다 코랑네 텐슈여라 디즈도 땅 텐파 텐슈다다 포구르다 먹으데 상만 코랑게 차르로 사이다
so
베전르다 어디
okay 아니 like 단다 가래 거야 하고 처음에 어디 지게 연결하다
아니 나드라 단다 바조데 가르친 두텐레라서
바주
뱀수레라서 어디 또 말라 빼 대올레마서
okay so she thinks that matter is something which has atoms and it is made up of atoms but then she has some confusion like how matters are made of like atoms and can you explain a little bit about that? For the properties, she gave the example of charge being the property of matter and also having electron and proton as a property of like an atom.
Right. So I'm going to share the PowerPoint to begin with. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yep, I can see. We can see, yeah.
Okay, so I can write on this one, so they can. So, I'm able to hear myself, but it's okay. So by first of all, we need to. Can you maybe mute while I'm talking? Mute the thing there because I'm hearing the sound.
We can hear you properly.
Yeah, you can hear me properly, but yeah, now it's better. Okay, so so to begin with, first, what we need to think about is we need to think about things that we understand directly. Nobody has seen the atom directly. You cannot see an atom just like how you see this table that I'm at or this pen. I can see directly. I can touch it, feel it. I can see it is here. So when we talk about things, this is how we want to talk about. We want to talk about a direct experience first. Based on direct experience, we then infer. We go inside and try to think about. So atom, I'm not saying that atoms do not exist. I'm saying that I do not have the direct experience of an atom. I can go into an electron microscope lab and I can look at some electron microscope images, but they are not still direct like this pen. For example, I'm seeing this pen directly, but when I see atoms, what I mean to say is through a big microscope, which has a lot of different working parts, things work. There are electric fields, magnetic fields that are lensing, and then I see something on the computer screen. I'm not really seeing it directly. So we have to note the distinction. So whenever we want to talk about things like substances and properties, we want to talk about from our common sense, not from some terminology like atoms, which we do not know yet. What we know is I can see physical things around me. For example, I can see, people, you're sitting in a classroom, you see people around you, you see physical things around you, you see trees around you. So, and among these things, you see that some things can only exist as a part of something else. They don't have independent existence. Meaning, if I say color, right? Pick a color, let's say red. Now try to imagine red by itself. Can you imagine red by itself? This is a question for them. You can translate and ask them this question maybe.
Ngaranzu nyongzor da khabdu tebe thoni en hak hoya jire dos nyugulana to tokdo shwa changaranzu nyongwang sum thoni ta chala di direshalan la dos yine ya duthe la di ngaranzu gi nyongwang sum gi thoni khabdu migla thoni ta onzu migla chebe thoni ta khabdu lagwala dinde jore lani thongu mares ta yine ya ngaranzu gi ni khalore module ki ani thadong chi she yura lokdul gi thadong chi she tanda electron microscope le do odinde pheje chebe na 다 자동제시 믹스지야 디 토네 당 어주다 뉴구다 부직다 코카레 두텐 조직 쇠샤라니 자동제시 원래 때베나 다 어디기 자동제시 나로랑 어주기 두텐라는 거바 딘데스도라니 다 클로레 파리디스 통그레스 얘네야 딩아란서 닌제 니레기 총안 나로라 잘라 락바직 두스 통안 능신기 초디 직번 말레스 그래서 지상 먼저 셈랑 가ring 여월을 뒤sam라 가두이네야 딜랑 저기 아니 뱀숙라다 아니 다 캐주얼라디 근데 초아가나 삼루다이레스라 이네야 듀티라기 당이드소 아니 다 칼로랑 저기 체 칼로레 트위제 표지 땅을 토니 아니 먼저 영화 합도다 테베 토니 다 레게 지레민도 디 인디sam나 아니 딘데릭랑 먼저 다 트위제 표지 땅 오키 요르델레 단데 타니 단다 아니 그래 뱀속다 캐주다 보이나 니레 소화 나로라 대화 요직 차요레스 베자샤나 카도 마르보 도슬레게 요베나스 카도 마르보디 카레라나 다 마르보디 카죠 캐주 차요로스 딘데 도치레스 yep
Okay, so can you ask them, like, can they imagine color red by itself? Not a red thing, not a red car or a red cloth or a red wall or red something, but imagine red by itself. I cannot hear you.
Can you unmute me? Yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, so I have to ask them whether red by itself is a substance or a property, right?
No, don't ask them that question. Ask them whether they can imagine red by itself. Like I can imagine a tree by itself in my mind. Like I can imagine a car by itself in my mind. But can they imagine something called red by itself without imagining it as a part of a substance?
Okay. Ani unlike cancel ani theojiusra marble di ani krangi semna lola chartu dwes marble da jidang onzo modala na ngaranzo moda di lan thongdura moda mau mai ba che marble lani marble chikbo chiklo la chartu dwes no
So
yeah.
That red, that color, the redness exists as a part of a substance. So anything that exists as a part of a substance is what we call as property. So when we say property is something, it is a physical thing. Color is a physical thing, meaning it is not a substance, but it's a property that exists as an aspect of a substance. And a substance is something that exists by itself, independent of other things. As in, for example, if I say tree exists irrespective of other trees, right? But let's say color, this color could only exist in a physical thing, like green leaves in the tree. Or if you take an apple, right? Apple is on the apple tree, but the color of an apple is inside apple, right? It doesn't exist by itself. So a substance is what exists by itself. A property is what exists as an aspect of a substance. Go ahead.
Dos marble na onzu khabdu lola chapthong min do dile dui zamla da casual la de khande rojiri na ani shi ji gi ting la yo ajik chayo res misa tang onzu gi bemsu ji gi ting la yo gyo jik da odi khar chayo re na casual ji chayo res pecha shama na tang onzu loma loma jangu la de lome teng la yogyo gi in khado di khachayo re jangu chayo ras kisi loma me bena khado jangu di chikbo chiklo la char thoe me ros tinde rojik chayo re cheza yine yang tang onzo kharchayo do keju la di bemso ji gi chashe ji chayo do as bemso ji gi chashe khado mar khre loma jangu la du zamla ta bemso khachayo re loma chara lome gi chashe khachar jangu di chayo do di rojik la yo re cheza keju la na gare ani bemso gi chashe gi ngo la ne bachi 고추사 되는 원적이 뱀수 코랑 가르나 코랑다 로가 직니 요레스 코랑 뱀수 배치시나 로마라나 로마 코랑 요로 디낭싱 로마라야 셴바지를 땡고 민도 다 갑도 로마라니 셴바 레바낭 원적이 로마 차두도 왔어 구슈 란도 잠나 싱동가 껴와딘데 원적이 로라 차두도 왔어 디 송장 원적이 셈나 가린 경우나 아니 뱀수라나 코랑니 도 간실라 케주디 아니 뱀수기 차시기 오가라니 있고 차요레스
Okay, so what do they think is a piece of metal? The second question on the slide is a piece of metal a substance or a property? What is their answer?
아니 저와다 지원이어들이다라 먼저 저그리 지어베나 더 저그리기 차시 저그리 춘주 지어이나 저그리 춘주디 아니 뱀속래 캐주레스 It's a substance.
Okay, how about the first question? Is cow a substance or a property?
아니 버주디 아니 뱀속래 아니 캐주레스
뱀수
substance.
Okay, how about length? Go through the questions, like third question, length, substance or
Okay.
property?
아니 단다 먼저 링체라 주라 고 링체라디 아니 캐주레 아니 뱀속레스 property.
Property. So we must understand the difference between length and measure of length. So whenever we say a physical thing means something that has many parts. So something that has one part next to another. This is what we call as length, that is having one part next to another. That is, if I say this stick has length, then what I mean to say is the stick has many parts, and there is part 1 here, part 2 here, one part arranged next to another. This property of having multiple parts, one next to another, is what we call as length. This is a property. Go ahead.
다 단다 딜랑은 저기 가ring 여올라나 타링동당 아니 링체라 주라 딩이 바라 켜지단 디셴고레스 타링동 라운데 잠랑은 저기다 ngobu지가 다 칭오부 락바지가 꼬시요레스 이내 원수 링체라인도 하래 칭오부디 땡기 낭 차시에 무투네 요교직라라요레스 페차샤와이나 단다 딜랑 원수 틱싱 로지오 차시나 틱싱 델라니 차시에 디기 젤라 디레 뒤잠나 따디 링체 차시에 찌기 젤라 인디 잠나 카르차고요레 코 링체라 지 용고도 왔다디 카쳐요라나 케주체도 왔
Can they imagine something, a physical thing? It's important that they imagine a physical thing. Can they imagine a physical thing that has no length?
아니 캔줄로라 딘데직 차투서레스 치 ngobo 다 운주 장외로 진바 한실라 다 징ngo불라나 장외로 쳐라 장외 임바 한실라 콜라 아니 링세 메교 딘데 로라 차투도스 치기 ngobo 링세 메교 so some of them are saying they can imagine example would be like a space, and some of them are saying round shape stuff, and some of them are saying they cannot imagine.
Okay, so the round shape stuff, we'll handle the round shape stuff first. So if you have a round shape, let's say this is the round shape, don't you think this has many parts?
아니 고고 단다 고고 랑게 지요스 다디다보로 랑게 디솔라 쳔베나 딜라니 차시 두아스 차시 찌기 젤라 찌 두아스 yes
Like if I take a laddu, right? Laddu would be made up of smaller stuff, but it would be made up of parts. And length is having one part next to another. So if this round thing has many parts with one part next to arranged to another, don't you think it would have length?
아니 단지 원조 칼레레 링셀라나 하르도 차시 찌기 젤라 찌 두아스 딜레디 삼노 고고 나노 카레레 차시 망부지기 좀 샤르디 콜라다 링세 요과도 지레 두아스
What do they think? Is it clear why it would have length?
아니 제산당 원조 고고라 링세 요르라나 딕서웨스 Diksa re mare langi. Re yes.
Okay. So now we'll talk about space on question 10. We'll come back to the question on space. I have like question 10. So let's go through the other ones. So mass, is it a substance or a property?
아니 되세라디 아니 뱀속 re kejures. Property.
How about charge?
아니 쿨라디 아니 뱀속 re kejures. Property.
So can charge and mass exist without a substance?
아니 저 디제디 가령 온주기 아니 되세당 쿨디 아니 뱀속 메베나 되세다 쿨디 레 요르웨스. No.
No. Now, what is gravitational field? Substance or property?
딜라나 티슈기 라와요라. 티슈기 라와디 뱀속 re 아니 kejures. Property.
Property of what?
아니 가리기 kejures. Space.
So when you say property of space, then is space a substance?
딜란디 잠라 아니 나 파나 랑게 데 so 아니 디 파나 디 뱀수 차요레스. No.
Then if it's not a substance, how can it have a property?
किसी को 아니 뱀수 메나 콜라 케조 컨데스리 레스. So property has intrinsic property and extrinsic properties.
Right, but it must be intrinsic to something.
아니 케조라디 다치 케조이니레 나게 케조이니 찍라 때니 깨오라스. 찍라 마데니 깨 메오라스. Let's go. Sugyore. So it has a body, but then it doesn't have. It doesn't have a mass. Space by itself doesn't have a mass.
Very good. Very good. Space by itself, it does not have mass. Excellent. So this is what Einstein basically showed, that the space is not nothingness. It is not nothingness. Think about nothingness. What do you mean by nothing? You see some things, and from that, you can imagine in your head how it would be if there was nothing. For example, all of you are sitting in classroom. Now I can imagine how it would be if there was nobody. Only because I'm seeing somebody, I'm able to imagine about nobody. Only because I see something, I can imagine about nothing. But this nothing exists only in my head. Nothing has no real existence. So nothingness doesn't exist in reality. So space is not nothingness.
제가 아니 빼고 송소스라 다 가리라나 원주기 파나디 아니 개고시 매교된데 말레스 기시 개고시 매와이나 원주 레바나로라 차례 레바나로 차교 잠리 마시 칠로라 요마라 매바이나 개고시 매로스 제가 아인슈타인 기 가리송레라나 땅 원주기 아니 남칼라주라 남카디 아니 매와 마레스 남카 요레스라 남카 기시 매와이나 땅 원주 로라 차도 마로스 제가 아인슈타인 기 다가나 송요레스.
So it is a real physical substance that has no mass. That means it has parts. The space has parts because, for example, you are sitting in one part of the space and another person is sitting in another part of the space. But even if that person gets up and sits in your lap, still you're sitting on the ground and that person is sitting in your lap. So no matter how you think about it, right, all of you are sitting in different parts of the space, means there are different parts of the space, which means it has one part next to another, which means space has length, but it does not have mass. So space is a substance, it's a real physical thing.
제가 아니 원주기 남칼라디 가리라나 아니 디지레스타 뱀속 직쳐요레스라 뱀속 임바 한실라 콜라 가리요라나 아니 칼로레 링체 요레스 이니 링체 요와 가진레라나 아니라 찌기 젤라 찌데도스 किसी फनाला किसी रिंसे में बेना उनको चाशे ली मारोस चिजा देला योग्य आने ला मंगबो जिक साजे दिगला साजे जिने देयोरे दिगला आने रिंसे चाशे जिगी जला जिगले धुए दोस दिले दो खला हरेयोरे रिंसे योरेस and dinang sing tang on zinda kalor taxi khana gela ta khashi jig lang de na taxi khana ya phana di sa je jing do jimo ma se ta sa je jig gijela jig chashe lo li dos chizam phana la khare la na ani dires ringse di yores ini ya dose yo mares adi ma se ani phana one more ani phana la di khala na chi gi ani ngoyone chu phana la de ngoyone chu yimba khanshi la ang ko hare bemsu ta chingögi bemsu jik chadiores.
So when we say gravitational field, it is a property, but it's a property of space, right? And what about electric field? Is it a substance or property?
Ta danji onzo khalare ani khole tenshu gi rawadi ani thanda phanangi ani khejure len la sarwas ta dilana onzo gi ani log gi rawadi ani bemsu re khejures property.
Again, it is also a property of space. So here the important thing to understand is you have substances, physical substances, and they have, all physical substances have length, right? Including space, it has length. All substances may not have mass. For example, space has no mass. But if the substances have mass, which is a quality or a property, or charge, these qualities of the substance which exists by itself would affect the space around them. And the way they affect the space around them is what we call as Rava, field.
Tadi thandang onzo khalalana ta chi gi bemsu shda ta bemsu di gi gangla ta onzo kheju yungora pecha shama na kheju khare bemsu gala khuri gi gi kheju lesire bemsu gangla onzo ani kharsa döse gi ani kheju lesire ini yang onzo phanan tabu ro chembe na phanan la onzo khare ani ko döse meres ini khola khare ringse di yores ra di indi samna onzo gi ta bemsu di ting la kheju thanda khur tabu yebe wangi khari ongorlana andi bemsu khur yogyogi bemsu digi phanan jigda phanan dila shugen tungyores shugen khandes tungolana khola rawa di tungyores logi rawa di tungyores logra di tungyores.
Okay, so now having understood that, we will see later in this course that light is nothing but electric and magnetic fields. So then light, would it be substance or property if it is made up of electric and magnetic fields?
당주 아니 롭생기 제마도 라 khare deshe gelna ani we la digana deshe geresral tanda onzu log leda log we khalani risara tanda delang onzu gi kisi lo do shawa chashna we yora we tabu do sembena we di khare la na onzu log dang khable ninga gi khejo yore leres we di khare log dang khable ninga gi khejo yore leres tadi khande ime ani jela lobse mala ma ni ma dura didu deshe geres 지산당 원수기 아니 왜디 아니 뱀속래 캐주 쳐요레스 property
Property of what?
가리기 캐주레스 이거 미직라다 로기 캐주레. So light is the property of this guy. Light is the property of sun.
No, we didn't talk anything about sun.
Property of space.
Correct, because even when light comes from sun to earth, what is between sun and earth? We have seen in question number 10, it is real physical space. It is real physical thing. So this light is coming in space. This electric and magnetic fields are in space, just that this space doesn't have any mass.
아니 딱 먼저 가르쳐도 왜 라디 그러나 아니 먼저 근데 개주 직차에도 가리 개주리나 남카기 개주 차요레스 반항기 개주 차요레스 빼자샤와나 먼저 왜 레세 중공 빼자시나 니마다 못 쳔바이나스 니마다 잠블링 바라라 가리오레 반나요라스 반나다 니마디당 잠블링 바라 반나요나 반항 먼저 가리라레 뱀수레라라 뱀수델라 되세 민교지레란 라사로스 지사 니메기 아니 슈겐데 거티도 반나델레 저 성상 먼저 칼레요레 왜 딜리요라 지사 왜디 가르쳐요레나 반항기 개주 yes.
Okay, so then time, is it a substance or property?
지산 딜레 되zamla 당주 투주라디 아니 뱀수레 개주레스 property
Property of what?
그래 개주레사 a change.
Correct. Change happens because you have different physical things. For example, you can let's imagine yourself to get up and walk away. then you can say I walked away with respect to those people who are sitting. So you compare yourself to another person, and that's how you say you changed, right? So this change requires comparing physical things. So when you compare physical things, it's extrinsic. That is, this is not intrinsic. Like, for example, length is intrinsic property of things, but time is an extrinsic property, meaning it comes from change, which is external.
지산 땅은 주 가르나 두줄라디 가래 아니 교회기 개조직 차도스 가지나나 단다 안라기 주 데데어다 디니 감 가시시니야 라와이나 칼레랭아 라이레로스 가르라 되네 셴바직라 되네레로스 지상 주기 두줄라디 가르도 치기 개조직 차요레스 치 개조직 차요레스 치 개조 가진 차고라나 셴바직라 되네 아니 라기요로 디송잔 치 개조 차요레스 이내양 주기 링셀라디 가래 난기 개조 차요도스 다 뱀수디 카레 차시 망부 요아 송자 차시 망부디 카차요레 링세라 딜리기 요로스 지상 링세디 난기 케주 임바하실라 투즈디 치 케주 차요레스 가지나나 지글라 떼니 라오다 대교 지글라 떼니 nga 라지 리도 지상 디 그루아기 케주 임바하실라 아니 치 케주 직 차요레스.
Okay, last question. What is a measurement?
다 저와 담아디 아니 체제라는 칼로요레스. Se jail ana khalor. Di khabar de jik phajidanda.
ngobo gari ine ra deregi korangi da logoda chechung ine de ra ani jigesale ine desala chi gyayagi ani chigla ani measurement dir.
So anything which we can, like measure, for example, like a substance which have a mass or may have a length, we say it has this much weight and this much length. So this is called measurement.
Yeah, that when you say that doesn't define anything. The way you're saying, when you are defining something, you have to define it in terms of, not what it means, but how it is done. When we say that something has a length of 4 meters, how do we do that?
아니 그랑기 아니 디 체제와라나 카레라도 그랑나 카르 고쳐서라니 딘데가라 디시게 아무데 지당 먼저 체제와라디 챙이샤도 고도연라슬라요라다 고도연라디 샤와 참데라 아니 칸데로 샤와나 기시 ngobojiglada rinse 아니 미러 시요레도 슬라게나 디 던다 칼라요레스. 개주 등교레스. So when we say it's a 4 meter, we are actually specifying the property of a substance and its length.
Right, but how is that 4 meters gotten? That is, you have some stick, let's say you have some standard stick, which you're calling as 1 meter.
아니
You have established this.
아니 그러나 미러 시 라디 카데 사코레스. 딜라도 그러나 미러 직 지교기 아니 체 야샤교기 틱싱 지교로스. Yes.
And then you measure with respect to this meter stick. Like, for example, I have established what 1 feet means. So I say this much length is 1 feet. And then I say, okay, I am 5 feet 10 inches, means, I'm comparing myself to this another stick, which I call 1 feet, and saying, how many of those sticks would be in me, like 5 or 6 feet, let's just say for simplicity. So there would be 6 such sticks to make up for my extension. So do they see how it is a comparison, how it is a relationship between two different things?
아니 당원 저기 미러직 라인드스만 가래도 택시 녜네 디 미러직 레 라이거직라 시샤와 더네 당 오버직라 체지구나 디 차와 가제 돌레니 라게요로스 딜라디 삼나 딜라 뜨니 인데 차와 가제 돌레니 직제게도 스페셜 샤와나 딩에기 핏지 라더스 핏직 레 라리다스 계시 땅 알아 핏 가제 요라나 인데 차와 땅 마란라 딘데 차와라 떼베기 nga 딘데 차와 가제 돌레니 마란라 체 딘데 직 지기요로스 딜라디 디디니 데와직 차우도스 So
a measurement is a relationship between two physical things.
Bemsu dila tebegi didi tindejik relajura mirajik gi thishin dila tebegi di supuringze di mirajik chawa dinde khaze dolana dindejik dolani dewa chudo dewa jik chayures
For example, if I say my mass, I have a mass of 75 kilograms, then that's a measurement. So what am I comparing there? I say, I'm just saying my mass is 75 kilograms. So what is really, what is it that I am comparing myself to?
Ramakrishna, can I have a question? Like one of our students
Yeah.
have a question.
Yes,
Ani
sure, go ahead.
단다 디거서 대화 레슨서 단다 디거서 measurement 라이디 아니 단다 디거서 substance 디 뱀수다라 아니 규정이기 대화된 거래.
So is measurement a relationship between a substance and a property?
No, it is a relationship between properties of two substances. Think about length. When you say the length of this stick is 1 meter, right? You're just establishing a standard for the property, how many parts are extended. So you're calling 10 parts as 1 meter, let's say. Then you check in another substance how many parts this has. So if it has 20 parts, then that would be 2 meters. So you are comparing length of one thing, which is a property, to length of another thing, which is also a property. So it is a relationship between properties of substances.
다운 저기 아니 체제원라나 칼레요라나 뱀속이 캐준이 바라라 대화 주고요레 스페셜나 단다 미러지기 링세 디 틱싱 지요나 미러지 지금 틱싱기 링세 디 카제레 틱싱디기 캐주디 미러지 차요라 미러지기 링세 디 차요라 딜라 떼베기 뭐보 셴바지기 링세 딩이 바라라 캐주 뱀소니기 캐주 바라라 대화 다셔라 딜랑 아주 칼레레 세제월라요레 스페셜 샤와이나 미러지 체교 미러지라나 하레 틱싱지기 개주 링세디 꼬시기요라 미래직 제교기 개주디 꼬시기요라 디디 미 수부지간라 자라이나 미디간라 아니 틱싱 딘데 미디기 수부 링세레도 틱싱디기 링세다 미디기 수부 링세 바라라 저와타사 고치세 디송자 칼레이나 원주기 체제와레 디잠나 뱀수기 개주니 바라 저와타들라 체제와라 요레스 뱀수니기 개주 바라 저와타들라 체레스
Okay.
저와 갸바 Jawa Sueba. Okay.
Did they understand? Is the question clear?
Dila Jawa Yange Yue, go to say. Bemsu Nigi Keju, Bemsu Soso Kejura, Bemsu Nina, Bemsu Tanda Tixingi, Ringsig, Lana Tixin Kurangi Keju Chayora, Niegi Ringselana, Niegi Keju Chayora, Tixingi Keju, Tixingi Ringse Keju Dida. 니에게 수부 링제 바라기 개주니 바라 저와다사 다 딕싱 미러직 지교되다 ngal 미러 가지돌나 ngal 미러직데 차가 도르슬이나 딕싱기 링제데다 니에게 링제 바라라 저와다니 nga 미러직데 차가 돌라치리도 디송자 체제와라디 카레 뱀수기 개주니 바라라 저와 갸바 저와 쇠바 딜라 칼레요레 세제와라요레스 저요 Any question? 저요 지워 세우직 당다라.
nga dinda chenyi dinda shana disamare karchenara amone la gongda la ani nga tes sarwachai mindu ne karla ne dewa te parula genla de dewa mangboyra ngoponi phala da dewa pe mangboyore dewa tes khoni parke khyache la na ta khyache de takpala che la na digi mindora che la shishani yang tes lamna
So this definition of measurement is not really correct, not really, like right for me. But I would rather say, like when we relate two objects, there could be many ways of relating two objects, two substance. So instead of saying, like relating properties of two substance, can I say relating properties of two substance with respect to a specific unit?
But what is that unit?
Oh, the zishi dikares, ani ki zishi jiksha na lemba. Mirada? So the example could be a kilometer and a meter. So if I say the object has kilometer, something kilometer and meter, then that could be a.
But that's the thing. What is a meter?
Meter
How
lana
would you
khares.
tell? For example, I think about a meter. I need to tell you how much is a meter. How would I tell you how much is a meter?
아니 미들라나 카레사. It's a measure. Meter is a
Right.
measure.
And that's exactly what we're talking about. That measurement is that unit.
제가
When
아니
you say
디가 먼저
measure.
한다 디가 꼴시기 요로스. 세라 디가 꼴시 되어로스. 지금 this go. I'll see how many of them understood this concept.
Okay.
Can I 아니 like 현존 나오니 디세 제와라 디 고추교 라고시간다. 세 제와라 디 고추 손랑이. 고추 말에 많지. Okay. Okay, seems like they have somewhat understood how you define the measurement.
So yeah, measurement is always, you have to establish a standard with respect to one property of a substance. So if I take a stick, this is what we do. When you're saying a meter, there is actually a standard stick in Paris that is there in a museum. When you say your weight is 100 kilograms, there is a 1 kilogram standard that is made up of iridium and platinum, a cylinder that is considered to be exactly 1 kilogram that is there in Paris. So that is the standard. So when we say 1 meter or 10 meters or 10 kilograms, we are measuring with respect to that standard. We are relating the amount of things in this to into another, or amount of extension in one thing with amount of extension in that standard stick. So it's always a comparison. Even if you have to establish a unit, it's always a comparison.
Okay. 다 단지 카레레나 다가 앉아레스 단당 원수 되시게레 스페셜나 미러직 라디로 소미나 미러직디 땅 오버직이 캐주직 쳐요로스 베신 다 어디 미러직도 하네레나 파리스요라 파리스는 하고라 프랑스 파리스기 게사 프랑스 니사 어디 프랑스 파리스라 아니 다 원수 컬러레 잘라 단당 원수 미러직 지고 잘라 지오레스 다디 미러직 레다나니 지시 템베 치레스 디디 잘라 디카레 미러직 레란 템베 쳐 시샤 치니 땅 오버 창메 링도 딜라 두르니 아니 디단 저왔다니 디링세 디레샤 디링세 디레샤레니 라요레스 타가나신 아니 킬로 라조라 킬로그램 라디 타양 잘라조 잘라 디 킬로그램 치그레달란 딜라 시샤니야 두르니 시요타 딩이 바랄 저왔다니 시요 시산 디 상말랑 저 칼레요레 시시 템베 찍로 시샤니 저왔다야지도 케주 펀주 저왔다야지도 어디랑 저 칼레요레 세저.
Okay, so now let's do this question, the Coulomb. What is a Coulomb? Is Coulomb a measurement, or is it a property, or is it a substance?
다저 디와신바지 두긴다사 쿨롬 라시도 쿨롬 라딩 어저 체제디레 체제지르웨 야메나 코니 카레 뱀숙지레 야메나 코라 아니 케주지레스. It's a so it's a measurement.
Correct. And what is it measuring?
가리체지요레사. Amount of charge.
Right. It is measuring a property called charge, right? And now, what is 1 Coulomb? Is it equal to, they can pick from the options. I hope they're able to see the Tibetan translation, so maybe they can tell me what is the right answer.
아니 다 디낭로라 탄당 저기 쿨롬니스 지시기 땡도 예베 코리인 남는 티도 온디 담가 에 디카도 록두기 창보르 니제 시기스 카디 아니 쿼크 시기스라 카 시디라 아니 파두기 장 예제 시기스 디디 록두지기스 이디 아니 파두지기스 캬주 카도디 되나 디도라 ABCD 카기이나 이 단계는 알로겨 카도 메교디. So they are going to show you the
Okay, I cannot quite see theirs. Okay, most of them are showing A.
yeah, most of them are showing A. There are 1C and 2Bs.
Okay. So,
yep.
So
Two
the right
Cs and
answer
two
is
Bs.
A, right? So a specific large number of electrons. Very good. So let's move on. I got some questions which we will discuss, in some time. But we want to get ahead with our material. So let's talk a little more about electric potential. And in trying to talk about this, I will also answer your questions.
아니 당은주 데 디디 뼈 총수스 당은주 화드려나 아니 로기 아니 레체라디가라 두기스.
So when we talk about field, we saw that this field, any field, whether it is gravitational field, electric field, magnetic field, all these are properties of space.
당은주기 아니 라와 거시베 참들라 라와라디 카레 용시르나 로게 라와 용시르 카블랭게 라와 용시르스 아니 테슈기 라와 용시르스 라와 라와 슈고 카르라나 디창몰로 아니 파난기 케주 차유레스 파난기 케주 차유레스.
So now let's consider that we have, some substance like the thing that I drew here. This can have different properties. Let's say this has a property of mass, right? Then if it has property of mass, then what is it going to do? It is going to modify the space around it in a certain way. And that modification is what we call as gravitational field.
당은주 델라 아니 뱀수 지요레스라 뱀수 델라 케주 카레요레 되세라디 요레스 다 뱀수 델라 케주 되세 요교 디기사 파낭라 카레 치글라나 슈겐 슈퉁기레스 겐 직퉁기레스 겐 디기 왕기 겐디 카레 용굴라나 아니 코랑기 테슈 라와디 퉁기요레스 뱀수라 케주 되세 요베 왕기 파낭라 슈겐 카레 퉁고레 테슈 라와 퉁기요레스 케주 칼라테네 되세라 테네 테슈 라와 퉁기요레스. Yep.
Okay, so now if instead it has a property of charge, what is a modification in space called? If it has property of charge?
기시용 먼저 뱀수 지어 제 뱀수 될 케주 하나나 쿨 요레 라와이너스 더 바나나 아니 슈겐 카르티레스 electric field.
Right. Can charge exist by itself?
아니 지워신바디 땅 먼저 쿨 라이드 코나 제 로가 직내 두고로스. No.
Okay. Can charge exist without mass?
아니 다 지워신바다 쿨 라이드 아니 되세 메베도는 내 두로스. No.
So does space have any charge?
아니 딜레디zam라 아니 바나라 아니 쿨 요로스. No.
Very
Someone
good.
saying yes,
So,
someone saying no.
yeah. For those who are saying yes, space doesn't have any mass and any charge. It has only length. It has fields. So when the effect of this charge is around, it is changing the space around it, right? That effect is what we are defining in terms of field. So space has fields. Massive things that have mass have charge.
아니 다운주기 되세 덴베기 쿨 요교이메나 가리용굴라나 아니고 아니 라와 직중교레스라 아니 딘데기 라와 요교 디술라 하나나 온주다 lokra jebe jo kuriwa chi khabres ani onjo khara ha gogorlana ta phanang la khare duche yo marwas khola ringse di yungoras ta ringse di yungores.
By the way, I think in some of the Buddhist texts, they call this space as, I don't know if the students know this term, akasha. That's the Sanskrit term.
아니 다 안라 긴수기 쿠란이 나초기 다 데위기 니 베데딘데 토손스라 딘데 나올라 아니 마 고주기 파낭라 타이 산스크릿기 니 아가샤라니 티샤스라 다디 긴조 페진 신교에 나사. Yes, they are saying it's Akash, not Akasha.
Akash, right? I mean, that's fine. So, but that's what it means. So what Einstein actually did was he was talking about Akash. So, okay, go ahead.
아니 따디 다가랑 아니 아인슈타인기 셰요레스 파나라디 다 단다 나주나 셰지다 오디 인 아인슈타인기 다가랑 셰요레스.
Okay.
아니
So now I want to give you a scenario and I want you to think what happens. So let's say you go into a huge room. Okay, this is a huge room. Okay, and there is some hot stove in the center. Now, what would happen? How would you feel the heat as you are far away from the stove and as you walk towards the stove? Would you feel hotter near the stove or far away from the stove?
따디 좋아디랑 자르셔라 탑지어체 낭진나 탑주나스라 탑디기 참 카제슬란 차우초레스 카셀란이 차우메어디 소르게레스. The one when the closer area to the hot stuff are hotter, and
Right.
the farther away it's more cold.
Okay, so in a very similar fashion, right, same thing happens to a charge. That means if I have, let's say, instead of a hot stove, let's say this is a charge. That means this charge modifies the space right next to it. So this is the space right next to it. This is modified to be hotter, more intense than space that is farther away. Do you see that?
Tadi jikbajikang des kesi unzu ta saja jigyo che saja jingnang la khur yogo jigyo be nasa khur ding yedam la yogo gi nang phanan jigra odela shugen chuk chishu te yores ta khur dine khaje gi tharing do na ani khur digi shugen te di nyo do yores. Yes.
Do you agree? Okay.
The
So then,
yes.
So then now what we will do is we will take this room and mentally we will divide this into some grids just for our convenience. Just to, and this grid is not in the room, like it's not a real thing. We're just imagining as if, just drawing this grid just for our mental convenience.
Tang unzu khajena na ani unzu ni ta khangwashdo khangbadi dang ranzu chanang la ani khangbadi gopshe geindas. Khangbadi photumbutumbutum matub sheindas ngaranzu chanan khangbadang moni ende gopshe gedinde yomaro ta ko khangba khari imbat ta dina khajirang unzu chanang jik twin sajadi khangbe nanglu gi sajadi be tumbutumbu ngaranzu go chela tab de yomachi to ko tumbutumbutum sheindas.
So now I want to measure the potential in this. And we know that measurement is a relationship. So what I can do is I can establish some unit and say the potential here is 100. It is, intensity is 100, let's say here, in all the parts that are right next to the charge. And as you go away from charge, let's say it becomes 50. So in the next circle, it's 50, right? And so if you keep going, let's say maybe it'll become 20 here. So I'm just establishing a unit and writing that parts right next to the charge are affected more than parts farther away. And to indicate it in terms of mathematics, I'm just giving them some units, some numbers, and saying immediately around it, the space is modified, is hotter. So I'm giving it a higher number, 100. Farther away, it's not so hot, not so intense. So I'm giving it 20.
Ta dinan tangan zugi kambo goshe gasha gusto odigi ani khurgi ngedam la yugu desu ani khurda nyoyo songza ani koigi ani shugen te de chikbati roas chikbati wang do tawen na khaza do gyage gyate shados ta di wonzo che jewala de khare chikla teni khurani paral jewa da gora di songza de la den di samla thanda wonzo che je gi chido chishi di ta thanga do jik shares ta di la wonzo saja khurgi ngedam la yugu samala gashe dine this taring drosuna kunsangwa taring ze jikba chero kunzolang up chuchi tendo dine pass drawing nishu te shares di ini go to dos. Yes.
Okay, so how space is immediately modified? What is the disposition? We call it disposition, meaning what is the particular way in which the part of the space is modified. That is what we call as potential. Because if there is a charge, its disposition, the way it changes, what it has is different near the charge than far away from charge. This is what we are calling as potential.
Chisantang onzu khajido khurgi nyedam la yogi ani phanadida khurgi ani khazegi tharing drosuna ani phanang khorangi ledang di loga chegdos ta dilang onzu khalare lechelani mingta shares. Disposition of space and khurgi nedang di pabela yoda khurdi nedang kharla nedang khurla tebegi nedang di la pabegi lechu loga lido chisang onzu khalare de la thangi khata share lechelani lechelan ta shir konda lechelani ta shares legi che yeah.
Now, if there is difference in potential between two parts of space, I call that a field.
Ani kisi onzu geta phana nanglola ani leche khebar yebenas phana nanglola leche kheba di phana de nanglo leche khar do gyare do di phana de na leche khajar do ngabjure da tingi para leche khebar do dilang ye khaler la na rawa le res kharle re rawalere phana imba jibala khurani gi lese khebar yo songzan delang onzu khardere rawalanteres.
Imagine this charge is not there. Then what would be the values in these cells? Would they still be 100, 50, 20, or what would they be?
다
How much?
주어지겠어. 키시 먼저로 아니 디 델라 가르도 키시 델라 가 나니 여비나스 아니 라와데 융그르웨스. No. 고주세. 키시 델라 아니 가가 레웨나 라와 융그르웨스. No, they won't be a field if everything is same number.
No, yeah, everything is same number, right? If there is no charge, then, if there is no star, all parts of the room would be, similar. And so you won't see why it would get hotter if you go closer. There's nothing there. So if there is nothing, all these cells would have zero value. Do they agree that if there is no charge, all these cells would be zero?
아니 기시당 원주 델라 단다 탑 로쇼이나 탑 메베나 델랑 원주 최세 상마 집을리로스 로 디낭신 기시 델랑 원주 쿠르 메베나 아니 반낭기 사자 가와드네 사다 가와드이나 정말 아니 세시디 가지샤워 레고 샤워로스 레고 샤워 켈링기르웨스 켈링기르웨 레고 샤워 켈링기레 고닐레인다 디스코 고닐레인 I'm going to repeat that 야포냐 기시 델랑 원주 당 원주 델라 쿠르샤다 쿠르기 베준 가샤레 탑샤 탑 메나 죄 개바 두레 개바 두마라 죄 메와 차두라 뭐야 디낭신 델라 기시 쿠르메베나 쿠르메베나 반낭 디강자 반낭 디간자라 아니 쿠르기 슈겐데 용구레 용구마라 슈르기 쿠르기 슈게 마요나 안기 마순 갈토 로고드 켈링그라 yes they agree.
Okay, so now if this is a negative charge, would they be plus 100 or minus 100?
Repeat that again.
Now we said charge is of two types, unlike mass. So you have positive charge and negative charge. So if I put positive charge, would the space be modified exactly in the same way as the negative charge?
아니 다 주어 심바진다 단당 원주 델라 카르도 쿠르직도스 다 안게 쿠르 심바직레와 차샤나스라 쿠르 심바디 키시 아니 쿠르 포다 인교직다 푸르 모다 인교니기 파나 나노라 슈겐데 단데 직바티르웨스. No.
So if for positive charge I put positive 100, positive 50, positive 20, let's imagine it was a negative charge. Then what would it be? Would it be minus 100, minus 50, minus 20?
다 주어지긴다스 단다 델라 키시 원주기 쿠르사와 레교디 아니 모쿠리 임베나스 다 장가디 마수니 아니 니슈 응업주 단다데 양업주 니슈렌도 장가디 카리 구르기레스 minus 차루레. Yes, they say that all of this become a negative.
If it is negative charge, right? So now let's consider a positive charge. Okay, let's consider a positive charge. Then all these values are positive. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in another charge. I'm going to draw that with green. I'm going to bring in another charge that I'm going to place, right here, let's say. This is another charge.
Rama, can I, here, I think I mistranslated. I thought you were saying there are two charges, one charge over here and another charge over here, which might be positive or negative, so I asked for them. Now you're bringing this, I think it's already covered now that you're talking about it.
Okay. Oh, I was meaning that there is only, okay, then let's describe the situation again. Imagine that there is only red charge, and because of the red charge, the space around it is modified, and this modification is what we are calling as potential, and I've given it some values like these 100, 50, 20, but there is only one charge, and the charge that is there is a positive charge.
다 ngi angelainda ngi diskurdan nordura ta thanda delang anju khajire kisi dela ning khurjiyo che khurjing ma shumarda kimala khuri gudi khare phogur chimbinas ta delang anju gi thanda khate shure phogur digi nyegola gudi solo changang anju gi ta chobachini gang ngapju nishulen tishayres. Okay.
Okay, so now do they agree that potential is different at different parts? Closer it is higher and farther it is lower?
아니 킨수기 켈링기로와 디니 아니 타니오디 아니 쿠르기 아니 슈겐디 채와다 타링 조스나 쿠르디 슈겐 총. Yes, they agree.
So now let's say I place another charge, this is a second charge, right? Which is also positive.
Kesi tang oju delo khur sawaji kilewainas deyang kharilana pogurres.
So what do I mean by this plus charge? Would it be a physical thing that would have length, or would this charged body not have length?
Ani ta tanda delang oju gi khur sawa kilegyoshdo khur sawa kilegyo dela ringse yorwes. Some are saying yes, some are saying I don't know.
Yeah, so charge is a property, and this property, what do you mean by property? It must exist as a part of a substance. Charge cannot exist by itself, just like color. Just like how you have read something, when we say positive charge, we say this is, I have a body and that body has positive charge. Just like how I have an apple and apple has color, I have a body and that body has length, mass, and charge, right? So these are properties that exist in a body. So charge exists only as an aspect of something that has length and mass.
Ani tanda delang oju gi khurla ani ringse yorwelana kejoji chayoras. Bemsugi kejoji chayo disamla tanda oju marbo lao de chikbaresra. Marbo dikhare bemsuji gi keju chayoras. Dinang sing tang oju khurdi tang oju ngobyogi kejoli kharkhali re ringse li re ngobyo kejola khoryo li re nise di khurdi koran kejoji chayo disamla ani mabo da ro chayores. 제자한테 ringse yore yomar. Kejo yona. They are saying, that is good. They are saying it doesn't have a length. And some are saying yes. Most of them are saying no.
So why it doesn't have length? Because it must exist as a property of a substance, and substance must have one part next to another. Even an electron has many parts. So if it has many parts, then that is having length.
다 가리라나스라 먼저 단다 가리키온 거리라나 단다 쿨라디 뱀속이 차시로와 라 쿨라디 뱀속이 캐주로 라 캐주이나 쿨 예배시고 뱀소 요 캡라 라안 뱀소요나 뱀소라 차시요라 차시요나 링세 용구라 라 제자 아니 뱀소 단다 쿨이나 쿨 예배시고 콜 아니 링세 리로 So, this go. Joya, do you have any question?
Gela da de kur chikpu lawa ina dila ringse mindu samgi do kain sina de marpu la ya de la nga zo kur mindu marpu la ya dila ringse yo mewa nangsing chung.
So when usually charge this go. Usually charge is a property of a substance, and likewise color is a property of a substance. And the color doesn't have a length, so the charge shouldn't have a length.
That is the mistake that you're making here, that when we say charge, we're not actually referring to the property of charge, but whenever we are referring to charge, it is a short term for charged, massive body. So when I say a charge, I'm not referring to the property of charge, I'm referring to a charged massive body. For example, my full name is Ramakrishna Podila. But people don't every time call me Ramakrishna Podila, they just call me Rama, right? So Rama, just like how they call me Rama by shortening the name, instead of saying charged massive body every single time, we're just calling it a charge. But what we actually mean is a charged massive body here. When we talk about charge only as a property, then that person is right. That property itself doesn't have length. That's correct.
Unlike Rangi, like you dembares, yene yangs, Tadang Suki, could let do some kurch, Korachikboji, Newaji Kamares, could let do some hare, Bemsuji, Kurlani, Semna Yaures, the wedding wants to Kono Chadi, Mangujik the name Gores, the could let you go Bemsuki, Gala Yogi, Kejuji, Layu Disamna, Kur Bemsuki Kurla Yures. What you say? Bemsuki Kur. 뱀수 강실라 쿨 댐바치다 어디 거시요레스 탄다 딜라 먼저 쿨지 킬레레라 뒤잠나 뱀수 강실라 쿨 이거지 킬레레라 요아지 레요레스 따디 간데 로시레나 코란기 쳔라 카레 라마 크리스나 아니 포딜라 레요스 ता खुरान की मोशे मजामा की खुरान रामकृष्ण पुदिला ला दिंग मारोस खाली रे राम लन ले दोस राम लन ता रामकृष्ण पुदिला ता यो जी ख्याप दो ओदि नांसिंग मोजे की बेमसु ला खुरिगो खुरदें की बेमसु लनी यांगे यांगे ला मगो थोनी मोजे खाले रे खुर लनी ले योरेस खादे रो आन खुरान ले मिंग राम लन ता नांसिंग तदी राम लन खुरान मिंग गांजा 추워지 캐어를 캬바지 친구도 딘데 로지 차요레스 딜라 뒤잠나 카레 단당 어주기 코르댕기 뱀수디 카레 링체 요지 찹기로 차요로스 이네 캐제 코난 조 짐바이나 캐제 단당 어주 쿨라이딜라 다다 카도 마올라오데 찍바레스 카도 마올라 링체 융고 마로 디낭신 쿨레 링체 융고 마레스 단다디 어주 쿨 찍보 꼬시기요 마레스 코르댕기 뱀수지 꼬시요레스 코르다 뎀베기 뱀수 오야 Yep.
So now imagine that here I have a red charged body. I have a red charged massive body. So that means I have length for this red color thing. And the green thing is also a charged massive body, which also has length.
Tadanda delang ojugi pecha shawana tanda del khatido ani kurmao jikchido kur khado mao yigchido dedi gare ani kurdengi bemsu mao chigyores kare kurdengi bemsu mao chigyores tagananshi didi kare kurdengi bemsu jangu chigyores.
So then would the top part of this green body be different from the bottom part?
Ani dil dizamla ani da kurdengi bemsu shda tanda kurdengi bemsu jangu digi tue choda me choni loga yon chures gochuse angela inda kurdengi bemsu jangu shda odigi tue choda tue yora tue choda me chodi ani keba yon chures. Yeah, it can or it cannot.
How can it not be?
So what difference are you like asking? Is it, do you
For
have
example,
a specific difference?
Yeah. So what let me draw this a bigger way, okay, so that they can see it more clearly. So let's say I'm just drawing a bigger massive body, but this is applicable to all things. So let's say like this. I'm just drawing it bigger just to show them. This has many parts. So the top parts are at a different location than bottom parts.
Tangi kinzulani ka kachingna remudi cher dangindas kyanzula cher kocha lelao yonchido. Tadi kurdengi bemsu jangush do digi tue chosh do de jang tue do di gang jig do gang da wo di ningalo ani keba yorwes. So are you asking the difference between the charge of a top or the bottom, or are you asking the weight of a top and the bottom part, or the length of a top and the bottom part?
Not the length. Okay, let me maybe rephrase it. So this green, I'm only talking about the green color charge. This green color charge is a thing that has many parts, right? So the top will have some parts, the middle part will have some parts, the bottom part will have some parts. Imagine this like, one part next to another, right? Then would the top parts be at the same location as the bottom parts? Or would they be at different locations?
아니, that 좋아한게다. 디디 칼라나 탄다 장구 땅 시교기 뱀수시도 어디기 강도 강디다 어디 아니 그래 사자기 찬이 진단디 찍거리도 했어. No.
They would not be at same location. So now let's imagine, okay, three of you get together, okay, and form something like a train. Like, the first person in the front, the second person is holding the first person, the third person is holding the second person, and you walk into the previous scenario about the stove. So if the first person stops at a particular location, the first person is close to the stove, and the third person is a little farther from the stove. So would they feel the same heat?
That what thing you bet you chimba shindas. Tanji de la unzu khasha imbe tap shamba metap di shar das. Ta metap che an ani like into sum yura misum chigni sum to showina kinzo ngunzugi mekor nang khado kham mekor gi todo jikta ni ini sum sin tu na shin ani la kinzo sum lakwa jikta den den ji dwere das kha dwere meta besa di tam dwere das ni se ta ani la jik di meta digi dula li ro chik di pharma li ro chik di gabla li ro as chizang ani meta di la tebe gi ani la kunzo sum la thwe jik ba li ro es. So they are not going to get a same amount of heat.
Very good. So just like that, would the top and bottom parts of the green colored charge experience the same potential?
Chizan dila duizamla thanda ngonzu gi khalare thanda khurdengi bemsu jangush do khurdengi bemsu jangu digi me chodida tö chola thanda khurdigi any shukente adi chigbati res. No.
They will not feel the same thing. So when they don't feel the same potential, what happens is they begin to move in a particular direction, in a direction where the potential is decreasing.
Ta khajilana ta khunzo ani khurgi thanda khurdigi ani shukendi chigbati me sonza khunzu barala ni ngonzu gi khalor leche gi khebar chi yungu doas chizan leche gi kheba di khajire tharing ring dona chung du doas.
Now, if they imagine drinking water from a straw, in a straw, you pull the liquid up, so you put lower pressure. So water goes from high pressure to low pressure through the straw into the mouth.
아니 다이게 한저 셈나라 차라르다스라 신도 코어도 동고요 삼스라 신도 코어디나 가르려 원주기 아니 스트로 디 요라스다 원주 그래 파이프 디 요라스 따디 엔주 아니 보구디 다 파이프 디 두시니 스트로 디 말룩 셔두 잠나 가지레 디네 원주기 아니 뉴슈 마오요 사지네 토아요 사지리야 텐두 요레스 템바 송상 할리요레 원주 코어디 칸난 주두 요라스.
So just like that, this tries to move in, it gets this green positive charge, the second positive charge, tries to move away, just like the water in the straw going towards lower pressure, this tries to move away. So this feels a force. So difference in potential between different parts of the body leads to it moving towards lower potential, which means it moves away from the red color charge.
다 디송상 운수기 쿠dengi 아니 분수 장고데 가지고리라나 단다 운수기 추동인바 스트로디 비지다니 추동디 잠라고 아니 눈슈기 개발게 토니 야리도 야레디 용 송장 다난신 단다 델랑 운수 쿠르쟁기 아니 카르뱀수 마르보디니 코니 파 타르답 치그레스 파 트레답 치그레스 비게 게답 치그레스.
So when the potential is different in different cells, we say there is a field. If the potential is the same in all the cells, then we say there is no field.
Kisi ta onzugi ani panana lola kisi ani leche di changma chikba yimena ang onzu khare rawa yo maroas.
So if we have a positive charge, it moves away, it gets repelled. Why does it get repelled? This is the reason, because any positive charge, by any positive charge, we mean a positively charged massive body, would have many parts. So each part of that body would be at a different potential because they are not at the same location. Then they feel a force. They feel a force due to difference in potential, and that's why they move. And there is a particular direction in which they move, and that direction is away because as it goes away, the potential is decreasing.
Tadina onzu kharing yewalana thanda dela gyo bemsu konda khurjengi bemsu marbot dela tebegi thanda ani khurjengi bemsu jangudigi nesa gi chani kheba chagdo nesa gi chani kheba yundi zamla khunzu gi leze kheba gurgoras leze kheba gyo songzang khola shugen stiyores shuk stiyores kusuza shuk digi khajo khardo yare dos.
Now let's imagine the red charge is not positive. Let's imagine the red charge is actually negative. Then how would the potential in these cells change?
당원조 가지에는 쿨진 단다 쿨진 아니 뱀숙 마르보디 아니 목 단지 포구림바 포구르기 찹 모쿠림바 차샤오에나 디네갑라 당원조기 아니 단다 레체기 체당 줘라다고 단당원조 leze chedang di khandis chires. So the force will be towards the negative charge.
Right, so this will be negative 100, right? All these values would be negative 100. These would be negative 50 because now I put a negative charge, right? So the potential is all negative. Do they agree with that?
Chezang da dile du san da ngon gi mokur sha na dile gyo gi ani mokur gi da shukse jora da ngon mokur gi kembe gi ani phana nang la ani rawa tundang di da shukse di da ngon sangmo mo sha rawas da nyeshu di gya mokur mo gya che moda gya che ani dine dis tharing na moda ngap chu che dine moda nishu shin du rawas.
Right. So then, you know, if you look at it now, the direction will change because now it's trying to go the other way in the negative direction. So the positive will go in this direction where, you know, it is decreasing.
Chizanta tanda kisi di ina ngonzu mokuri imbi na andela poguri yego di khacho khadure ani docho di duroas.
Because minus 50 is more than minus 100. Plus 50 is lower than 100, but minus, when you change it to minus sign, it reverses. So now the same charge, same green color charge would now move in the opposite direction. The fundamental reason is still the same, that any charged massive body has multiple parts. So when each part doesn't feel the same potential, when there is a potential difference, they would move in the direction, but in the direction of lower potential energy. So if the red charge was positive, the green charge would move away. But if the red charge is negative, it would move towards, because now the sign of potential has changed.
당원주 쌤나 가린 야월나 던지 원주 디 아니 그래 포고림바 디 포고림디 som라 아니 단당원주 레체 체슈디 갸체도 디니 업주체 니슈 지산 레체 디 카지도 디네 파드나 아니 총총총 루다 다 단단 내급데 디 키시 모코림비나 디 모코르치 디 포고림베 참데라 디 단당원주 레체 가저도 디 모다 갸르다 모창 갸체 모창 업주 모창 니슈 레디 som라 가기 채와체 모란 이슈도 채워쳐라. 지상 안에 아주 쌤나 가린 야올나 비게 겨에 참다 슉디 카두에네야 아니 레체디 총외 촐라 루레스. 어주세 레체 총외 촐라 루레디 잠나 모란 이슈다 갸치나 가게 종어래. 모란 갸 총어라. 제장 아주 갈치나 가조디 마 루요레스. 카두에네야 그교 야단디 가리나 어주기 레체 총외 촐라 루레스. 어주세 레체 총외 촐레디 잠나 단지디 이니 포구림베 참들라 디디 카레 총어디 니슈 쳐라 라 포구 니슈 쳐라 중슈디 다된다 디 무슨 모타 모쿠림베 참들라 아니 장가 중슈디 카레 모다이 모탕 갸드 쳐라 세상 카조디 마조디 두로스.
Okay, so now let's summarize what we have learned. We learned about potential, that is disposition of space, meaning how the space is modified due to the presence of a charge. And by charge, we mean charge massive body.
지산다 돔 겨에나스 다른 원주 가리 장래라나 아니 로기 레체 라디갈 장레스 로기 레체갈 장레스 당 원주 레체라니 데시 겨에 참들랑 원주 가리 데시 게레 아니 파낭기 네타 파낭기 네밥유라 온디 뚱교레스 파낭기 네밥 레디섬 가르라 템베기 네밥 쿨라 템베기 네갑유라 쿨라 템베기 파난들라 슈겐테 당기 네밥시다 오디랑 원주 갈라요레라나 아니 레체 레요레스.
If there is no potential difference between two parts of space, would there be field?
That inda kisi leche la kebar maybe nas leche la kebar maybe na ani logra de tungirwes no field.
If there is a potential difference, then would there be a field?
Kisi any leche la kebar na ani logra yorwes. Yes.
So by potential difference, we see that potential difference is nothing but the field. When we say there is a field, that is the modification of space, we mean to say that one part of the space is modified differently from another part of the space. That is what we mean by potential difference. So that is what we also mean by field.
지산다 돔갸웨나 상온수 된전이버디 카르장라나 레제기 케발라디 장레사 레제기 케발라나 할레도 레제 케발레디 삼랑 온수 쿨지 예베왕기 파난데라 슈겐데단디 파난기 사차 so la shugen lo the do dos shugen lo the ba song za an leche lo yung go dos leche lo yung na khari yung gore rawa yung go ros 지산 돈다 도도 시원나 라왈라나 카레 레제기 켜발라 템베기 춤 쉐교 파난딜라 슈겐테규델라 할레요레 라왈라 유로스.
Now I'm going to ask you a question. Let's consider, some place where there is no charge or no mass or anything, and I'm drawing these cells. Again, these cells don't exist in reality. This is just like a room where there is no charge or no mass. So imagine an empty room. And then I mentally divide this into these cells. What would be the potential in each of these cells?
땅은 조 카차인라나 강바지 셈나 차라 강바디 낭로라 다 강주 망보 요sam라 다 디낭로라 기생 먼저 아니 쿠르다 개구시 메베나스 쿠르 메베나 디낭로라 쿠르 메교기 강바디 낭 강준데 주 상메기 아니 레제 카제레스 레고 오야 지로
Very good, excellent. Now, if I were to place a positive charge in the center box somewhere here, let's say, positive charged massive body. So whenever I say positive charge, that means like I will explicitly mention when I'm saying charge as a property. Otherwise, when I refer to charge, it's a charged massive body. This is for you, translator. But let's say now I put a positive charged massive body at the center. How would the numbers change in the cells?
다 카차인라나 기생 원주기 아니 강중 디낭로라 아니 강바 디낭로 강중 찌기 낭로라 카레요레라나 다 원주 카레 아니 쿠르덴기 아니 뱀수 지요레스 쿠르덴기 뱀수 마모 지요레스 도도 쿠르덴기 뱀수 지요레스 다 기시 쿠르덴기 뱀수요나 디낭로기 강중 디솔라 다 디소 파난 체로아 파난 디솔라 아니 슈겐 컨데스티레스 장가 러스테오이나 Okay, so they are saying that the cells which are closer to the charged body, the massive charged body, has a greater, like we have to give.
Very good.
If we have to
And
give
this
some number, it would be hundreds, and as you go further, it will decrease.
Right, very good. So this would be, let's say, just 100, and let's say this would be just 50, just some number. Okay, we're not bothered about the measurement right now, so just putting some numbers there.
다들랑 언제 추바치네 다 장가 때샤 교직레스라 인지미지 가당갑지 고고야 쇼마레 당 언제 지시직라 시샤네 단다직 때샤 교직 차요레스 추바로지.
Now I'm placing another charged massive body which is negatively charged.
다 기시스라 단당 언주기 아니 쿠르덴기 아니 뱀수 마무디기 담라 아니 쿠르덴기 뱀수 몬보직 샤와이나스라 쿠르덴기. So the blue charge is a negative one?
Yes, the blue charge is a negative one and the red one is a positive one.
Okay. 당연히 여기 아니 쿠르덴기 뱀수 마르보디 카도 포다르다 포쿠르도스 이니 아니 모쿠르기 아니 모쿠르쟁기 아니 뱀수 술레 킬레베이나스 아니 칼치그레스
Right. So there would be minus 100 here due to the negative charge now, right?
अदी negative chair वासा मोटा chair वासा malo.
So if I have two charges, one positive, one negative, right? Then what would be the net effect?
제가 땅 가치레 녜들 사자 다가랑랑 저 가르킬레레 포고르 지킬레라. 디기 담랑 가르킬레서 포고르 예배왕기니 홀라 가레랑 온주기 아니 장가때베 참들라 포장 샤임바 다 기세 모고르 킬레나 모탕 알리로스 다 모쿠르 기겜베기 모쿠 모탕 갈레레 포고르 기겜베 포장 갈레레스 다 딘데레 디섬나 되다 도도야 집에나 온주 큰 돈베기 아니 그래 장가디 가셔 so it will become zero.
Right. But positive charge and negative charge, they don't destroy or they don't stop producing potential. What happens is when you have positive and negative, positive modifies the space one way, negative modifies it exactly the opposite way. It is like as if you're holding a stick and pulling from both ends with the same force. So then nothing happens, right? So similarly, both positive and negative charges, both still modify the space. But the way the negative charge modifies is exactly opposite. So then we end up getting zero field.
지산다 넘겨와이나 칼라오나 포구르당 모구르 포구르징기 뱀숙당 모구르징기 뱀숙니 여바 차샤나스라 포구르징기 뱀숙당 모구르징기 뱀숙이 바나나 준비 슈겐디 펜수 독초 차와 송자 아니 바나나 슈겐 갈차요레 지메 차요레 딜라디zam나 코르니 펜수 바라라 쿠르징기 뱀숙니 펜수 파주 자메 당리세와 라게요 마레스 따디 칸데 로실라나 먼저 잘라직 주르다 디네 슈텐데다 디네 슈텐인가 찍바 텐데나 잘라 디글에 켜봐 루래 루마라 잘라 디글에 슈경 하자 레고 차라 잘라 다랑자 도아 어디로 차요레스.
So now if I were to draw the field only for the purple negative object, it goes towards lower potential. -100 is lower than -50. So only for the negative charge, I'm going to draw in purple. The electric field would be going this way, going towards, because that's how it is decreasing, right? -50 to 100, -50 to 100, -50 to 100. So decreasing like that. So going towards, going inside.
지상원주 쌤나 땅원주 단다 가르치일라나스 땅원주 니 포구르다 포구르 건다 모쿠르다 모쿠르 뭐뭐 이규다 모쿠르 카도 뭐뭐 이규 되기 라와 카조 가이메 쭉보시 땡기인다스 모쿠르 카도 뭐뭐 되기 라웨 카조 가이메 쭉보시 땡기인다스 원주 쌤나 가르샤오리라나 가두에네양 캅다 모 라와 톰베 참데라 라웨기 니 레체 디 장가 총으로 두요디 가져디 챙겨요라스 고주세 라와 기 레체 총으로 두고디기 아니 라와 가 두기미 챙겨요라 빼자시나 단다 모탕 압주다 모탕갸 채와이나 가기 총어래 모탕갸 제상 딜레 뒤sam랑 압주여사네 갸초라 둥에디 다카레 단다 아니 모쿠르기 갑조 로 단다 록레기 갑조디 둥겨요라 제상 모쿠르기 갑조 가도 낭로레도 고주세 뭐야.
Okay, then how would based on this diagram, which way would the thing point for positive charge, for the red color part?
Di peri della signera danzon the pogur digi any rave capture the colleagues away from the positive charge.
Right, because +50 is lower than 100, +100, right? So I want them to see that they move in different directions because they modify space differently.
제가 아니 안라 kinsulo 가르된 탑시당규라나 단당 온수기 아니 레체디기 조초직도 어디 만다 요디 뚱규스 레체기 조초 가르도 단다데 레체 개발기 왕기 인록라 준당디 가져로가 리도 가르도 기시 뭐니 모쿠리 임비나 고창가 마어초로 조이디 잠나 나로 주로디 리도 아니 포구리 임비나 창가 마어르디 잠나 안 치로 줘야디 리도스 다디 갑주로가 디 뚱에치도 이스.
Okay, so now this was one of the questions that I got in email. How does, positive and negative charges, how they cancel the field? So that's exactly what I wanted to show here, that if you have a positive and negative charge, both positive and negative charge still modify space, but those modifications are kind of opposite to each other. So the charges don't destroy each other. It is not the charges are not canceling out. Their modifications of the space is what's canceling out.
지산다디난 가르도한 탑시당규라나스 코르니 펜수 바라 도시당지기 요마레스 코르니기 아니 바나라 중교기 슈겐 펜수디 파조다 메와 자메 태와조 차요레스 슈겐 도도시나 지기 수교디 샴바디기 메와소 송상 켄돈베기 슈겐디 가자레 레고 차와데 중교레스.
So for example, imagine you're holding a cup, right? The cup doesn't fall down. Why? Because Earth is pulling it, but you are also holding it back and applying another force on the cup so that the cup doesn't move. So the force that you are applying is acting opposite to Earth's attraction, and that's how the cup remains stationary. But the cup doesn't vanish. The cup doesn't get destroyed. So in a similar way, every part of the space around both negative and positive charges is being pulled in two directions. So it just stays there with zero field. But they don't get destroyed or they don't stop producing field. It is just that their effects are in opposite direction, so they get cancelled out.
Tadi tanda gela horangi porwaji juso porwadi juwe samdala ani porwadi tenshugi gembe hajore ma tenrugora ine kyorangi tenshu dala dogoya giche do khajido kyoran lakbai gi shukdi jude do shukdi tenshugi ma tenrugora ine dile doge chido krangi lakpa digi shukti do di songza ani porwa di ma zayure zayo mara so odi nangshin tanda delang anzu khachigore khurni digi shugi khurni gi ani phanang la shugen tumba khashila ani khursoso gi phanang la shugen te shegyodi chigi te shegyodi gi shemba digi zime tang tu yores cheza rawa matumba mares rawa tungi yores tumba khashila rawa ni phenju khachore zime theptu yores khuryo wadi ranjares.
Okay, so now we saw that a potential difference means field. And if there is field, then we saw that the charges would move. It would either move away or move towards, but there will be motion due to potential difference. So we are basically looking to create devices that can give us a potential difference. And battery is a device that supplies us potential difference.
당원주 단지레시 가리게레 아니 모쿠르징기 뱀수 다 아니 모쿠르징기 뱀수디기 겜베기 아니 바나라 아니 가르퉁기도 레세기 케파르지 퉁기도 왔어 다 딘데 온주 아니 ngran주기 초에 나로라 딘데 레세 케파르퉁기기 아니 잘라직 수요요레스 잘라디 칼라나 롱맨 레스 카레 배터리라 롱맨 레스.
So when we have a battery, we call the potential difference as V. That's a symbol.
지상 아니 온주기 아니 롱맨 배주당 롱맨기 가지고도 레제 케파 퉁기도 레제 케파 퉁바 송장 온주 레제 케파디 쳔버 챤라 아니 인지기 이기 아니 이기 위라디기 아니 레제 케파디 쳔버 치기 요레스 쳔다디 카레 레제 케파기 쳔다디 이기 위디 쳔 요레스 쳔딱 딱 호서.
And then we measure it, and that is we measure it in units, and those units are called volts.
다 쳔다디 카르도 레제기 케바 쳔바 칭이기 쳔다디 인지 이기 위체 디기 찌시디 하우사 찌시디 카리라나 voltage.
And then basically you can make a simple battery like shown in here by taking a piece of lemon, and then you can just take two metal foils like copper and zinc. And copper and zinc are different materials, so they have different ways in which their parts are arranged. And so when you stick them into a lemon, they can exchange their parts with each other. And that's how we say that there's a potential difference, and then the current flows through the circuit.
tadi gela khonangi danjingwen dela dishi gel na shirishra thana shuge tadi nalo khardong onjugi ani thanda ani copper gi ani longne ji da zingi longne ji che copper longne da zingi longne khonangi je gi rangsing gi wang gi chik di ani dulti gi yore chik di ani lok duldi lingi yora di len la ani gyur chingi gi dina kharola na onjugi ani di ge kedul yore la ro di songza dinde chine onju lok di tungi yo chik lok khandes tungola na thanda onjugi longne go copper da zinc parala ani leche khepar yo songza di kembegi lok di tuntu yores.
So we are going to give battery a symbol. We indicate it with different symbols. So one symbol of the battery is plus and minus. These are not plus and minus charges. This is the symbol for a battery, which means this battery is able to supply a potential difference. Another way to represent it is, positive by a longer line and negative by a shorter line. These are symbols for a battery.
다 디소 카산인도 나게라 디시게 사교데라 양게 슈두라 단다 온수게 롱멘디 쳔벌 제라 활동도 아니 모다 포다 직당 모다 직념도 티도 포다 지다 모다 직념도 이교디 가르쳐버 지요레 돈다 디바라라 레제 케바리 와직 뚱기요레사 디니 온수게 롱멘라 아니 쳔벌 리모티당 찍디 딘데스레스 찍디 두스레스 다디 가레 온수 포다 디뚱 돔다샤 돔다 차가티르로 디 텐다 데도 디 가둥걸라나 돈다 독도 딩이 바라라 레제 케바 줌버 칭에기 아니 트위제 당오즈게 트위제 디미 칼라레 롱맨 배터리 라 디셔요라 배터리 줌버 첼라 리무딘데 투 티다만라오 니 용요레스.
So when I draw something like this, what I'm saying is I'm connecting, this is the symbol for, let's say, any device you may connect to the battery. For example, you can connect a light bulb to the battery.
The Delangi remote in Rejik Tiridas. Ani langi zu logi thola lobjun jang and samla remote in Rejik Tirisra. Remote in Dela Hardo Dela tanda onzu tomda da di tenda shda. Di khari chungwa chigiyore, longmen di chungwa chigiyoras. Ta longmen di khari la tuisha. Dinde shine dinde chala ande jig tuidwa. Di chala di khatungore ya truje jigi chungwa chigi rumur chirta. Truje jig tuisha. Ta di truje di khari yongchula na onzu gi sheto dinde yongchores. Ya chala shimba dinde yongchores. Ta tunda dokdo di khari chungwa chigorda. Di khari chungwa chigore, longmen chungwa chigiyores. Ta di loglam jig chayores.
So,
So
I think we're going to go for a break, but what I would like for them to think during the break is if I take the battery and connect it to a light bulb, right, like this light bulb here, then this part of the wire and this part of the wire, there are two parts of the wire. Would there be a potential difference between these two parts of the wire that are connected to the battery?
Gelagi ni ta onzo chap parsing the sim shastra the in some chap parsing so unlike hands only some lo khari tanga lana thanda onzo gi longmen di khawa thu do longmen di ni loku gyuni khawa thu sha thanda shedo de la thu sha dos dila du samla ni shedo de thungi gi loku de ya chogi loku de da ma chogi loku shura tingi para la leze kheba yorwes digala samutang ro chis cha kapsu. Oh yeah. So we
Yes.
are going for break.
Yeah, but what is their answer? Do they think there is potential difference or not?
Yes, there is a difference between the wire which is on the top of the light bulb and the below the light bulb.
So I want them to discuss among themselves during the break whether anything should happen in the wire because of this potential difference. Like, should some charges in the wire move because there is potential difference? Because we have seen before that if there is a potential difference, charges move. So I want them to discuss during the break whether charges in this wire should move due to the potential difference.
Ta dina anlang hinsu soja la khare chudur chelana tanda gel anlang hinsu gelen khare gere shedo diga thungi gi ni lokuni de la ni leze gi kheba yore la ni logi leze gi kheba yore la ni len capsons ta leze kheba yo bala te ni logu nanglo la ni khare yungu yore la diga la ni thuwa dangi is khujusa logu lan hagura logi guba targu logun lameda logu guba Nise, the dela loguch tuishara. What is it? The Tandango dela had a longmen di, logu on a tuishara. Logu tuni any de call it, logu de call to share, on the shadow at tuishara. The logu di digit logu did a dig logu digana any lezeki keba yorelani, anakin zulengamba. The logu digi dingi para leze keba na logu dingi para la kari yungu yorela, logu and hagura wire. Targu ya. Oh yeah, targu nang khari yongore odi gala chudur chesa. Logun lameda loku. Oh yeah. Loki kuba. Yep.
Okay, they don't have to answer me right now. They can go for the break and then, I'll also go for a break and then we'll meet at 11 o'clock.
Okay.